Hey everyone, and welcome to Storytime, and today we are going to be looking at the subreddit. Are such malicious compliance where people conform to the letter, but not the spirit of a request? If you're new around here, please do hit subscribe down below so that you never miss out on another video. But for now, let's sit back, relax, and enjoy some malicious compliance. 1 Bananas, you got it. The office I used to work in was located right next to a grocery store. This place was a popular lunch destination. The people that worked in this building because it had a lot of quick options for lunch. Also worth mentioning, I worked with a great team. We got along. Great. Would have no problem backing each other up, helping each other out with difficult issues, bringing stuff in for the team, doing favors, and so on. Because I was usually one of the first ones in, I was typically the first to take my lunch, unless I got stuck on a major issue. So typically, before I left, I would ask my nearby colleagues, "Hey, I'm heading next door to the store. Do you need me to grab anything for you?" Periodically, 1 or 2 of my colleagues would ask me to grab something when I asked, and would give me some cash or their card to buy what they requested. We all had a great working relationship, and they knew I wasn't going to do anything untoward with that card or cash. It was no trouble for me because I was going anyway. And I usually came right back with my lunch and ate in the break room, or at my desk. One of my colleagues, let's call him Daniel, had an unusual request: bananas. This request was usually honored without incident during one such lunch trip. I headed over to the produce department to the usual large display of bananas they have, but this time I spotted something on the top shelf of the display that I had either never noticed before, or the store had just started stocking red bananas. I never knew that red bananas were a thing, so I had no advanced knowledge of what these looked like inside or tasted like. All I saw were these maroon-colored bananas. I saw a sign for the red bananas, but I didn't see a prize. I got an idea. I grabbed a bunch of conventional yellow bananas for my colleague and broke off one of the red bananas from the bunch I saw, not knowing how much they cost. I thought it would be a bad idea to buy a whole bunch, especially with someone else's money. I paid for the yellow bananas, put the cash that Daniel gave me. I used my card to buy the red banana and my lunch, and I stuck the red banana in the bag with Daniel's bunch of yellow bananas. It turned out to be a good idea that I only bought 1 red banana because they rang up at $1.50 per pound, and the yellow ones were probably only 30 cents per pound. So after getting back to the office, I put the bag of bananas on Tanya's desk along with his change. He thanked me, and I headed back to my desk. I sent an iMessage to a couple of my other colleagues I bought and stashed a red banana in Daniel's bag. Let's see how long it takes for him to notice. About an hour later, I heard an exclamation from Daniel's desk. "What the hell?" He held up the odd-colored banana. I told him while laughing, "It's a red banana." It was pretty quiet, work-wise, so our small team all converged around this red banana. In amazement and amusement, I did let Daniel know that I paid for it myself, because it turned out to be far more expensive than the normal ones. Someone asked the important question, "How do we know if it's ripe?" None of us had an immediate answer. A Google search told us that they're dark maroon when they arrived, so we thought that it was okay. Daniel was not up for taste testing this variation of his favorite fruit. Another colleague, let's call him Andrew, decided to give it a go. He tried to peel it and couldn't break the skin with his face. Angers, he used a plastic knife to nick the skin, and tried again to peel the layers of skin had separated, with the inner half of the skin still on the banana. We saw that the inside skin was a mix of white-green and the maroon from the outside of the banana. The green didn't bode well, but there was no stopping after committing to this expedition. Andrew worked at this banana persistently for a few minutes and finally managed to get about 1.5 inches of the white fruit exposed. It looked like any normal banana after all that work to get a little bit of the fruit out from under the skin, and completely undeterred by the previous struggle. Andrew took a bite. There was a very loud crunch followed by a surprised groan from Andrew. We all cracked up laughing. Never have I heard a banana crunch like that. Not even with dried banana chips, it sounded like he bit into a large, hard candy. It was a wonder that Andrew didn't crack a tooth on Earth. Suffice it to say, definitely not right. So there you have there's how a request for bananas turned into a hilarious break from office monotony. I did troll Daniel a few more times with the requests for bananas, but this was probably the best one. I don't know about you guys. But I really, really want to try a red banana. Now, I didn't know they existed until I read this story, but they sound cool. Banana malicious compliance. Number 2, I had mentioned in my previous post, that my prior office building was located right next to a grocery store that was a popular lunch destination, due to the proximity and their variety of quick lunch options. I had also mentioned that I would often be the first on my team to take lunch, and would often ask my team if they wanted me to pick something up while I was out. My colleague Daniel would frequently ask me to pick up bananas. This was another day at the office, and another plunge rip to the supermarket next door for lunch. When I told my team I was heading out and asked if any would wanted anything, Daniel gave a slight variation of his frequent request. 1 banana, just a small one. He handed me $1 to buy the banana, which I handed back to him, because I wasn't worried about buying something that would cost less than a quarter. I headed to the store, picked up my lunch, and headed over to the produce section, and the giant banana display this time. I spotted something at the top corner of the display that was a little more frequently stocked than the red bananas, mini bananas. Here's someone else's picture with a banana for scale. And thus an idea was born. The mini bananas were sold by weight, and the bunches were already bagged in plastic, so I couldn't just break off one from a bunch. They were about the same price per pound as their normal-sized counterparts. So I grabbed a bunch of mini bananas and one regular but small banana that Daniel asked for and went to checkout for the record. The bunch of mini bananas was roughly 50 cents. I walked back to the office, and while I was in the elevator heading up to my department's floor, I opened the bag containing the mini bananas and broke off one of the bunch I got back to my desk, dropped my stuff off, and headed over to Daniel's desk with the single mini banana. I placed the tiny banana on his desk wordlessly and started to walk away. Immediately. Daniel starts laughing. He showed the person sitting behind him this single mini banana, which made her love to. I reminded him that he asked for just one small banana, still laughing. Daniel proclaimed this tiny Cavendish to be awesome. I did bring him the normal banana he asked for after a few minutes of laughter. I told him that I could only buy the minis by the bungee, and that he could have the rest if he wanted, which he happily accepted. I have to say these two stories have probably been one of the best stories I've read, is so perfectly not malicious, but its compliance begged me to come in on my first day of vacation, and then threaten me with termination. As I was finishing up high school, I got my first job working at the Circle K down the street from my house. I still lived with my dad, and I had a pretty sweet deal because he was a consultant. Thus, his big house with a pool in a nice neighborhood was all mine about 3 weeks out for the month sometimes. As long as 6 weeks, my dad told me I had to start paying for my own insurance from my car, and there'd be no allowance anymore. So I needed some sort of job, but I didn't need anything major, so I took the job under the premise that they just needed someone part-time. Immediately, I was thrust into 40-plus hours a week at this place, as the manager had some weird inability to hire people. I honestly think he just lied about not being able to get people so he could run a skeleton crew to make his profit margins look better. I can't count how many times they had one person working a shift that needed at least 2 and could have used 3. Their place was always a bit of a mess because, as mentioned, we were chronically understaffed. He was always asking us to do a ridiculous amount of work, and at one point he even managed to anger the beverage distributor, so they'd no longer help stock the coolers when our drink supplies came in. So sometimes you'd be in charge of stocking all the coolers, a huge order, while having to keep an eye on the register and all the other stuff we had to do, like facing all of the shelves, rotating the hot foods, etc. Long story short, what should have been a brainless, awful job that did have awful pay, minimum wage, ended up sucking up a huge portion of my time, but life could have been worse. I had a lot of extra money and a really nice house all to myself. So there was some social perks indeed. At a certain point, I requested some time off to go on a road trip with some friends, and it was granted the day that we're supposed to be heading out on the road. I get a call from my boss begging me to cover. He acknowledges that it's supposed to be the beginning of my vacation, but he couldn't get anyone to cover. We probably didn't actually have anyone that could that day as we were so understaffed. Luckily for him, the driver on our road trip had let us know that we were going to be leaving later than originally thought, pretty much exactly when. I'd normally be getting off shift, so I agreed thinking Mr. Bossman would owe me one. So I go in and is there, gratitude, is there some beer with a bow on it waiting for me, as a post-shift. Thank you, no. The dude gives me this ridiculous list of stuff to do. There was always a lot of work to do there, but this was actually the most ridiculous amount he'd ever dumped on me. The icing on the cake was that he ended his whole spiel with, "And I need all of this done tonight, or don't bother showing back up." The douchebag actually had the nerve to threaten me after I came in on a day that was supposed to be the beginning of a vacation. So I waited for him to leave, enjoyed some hot dogs while reading a magazine, sold myself a ton of beer. I couldn't stoop to actually stealing, but I was under 21. So this was convenient, and then closed the place up about 2 hours early. I didn't want to leave right away, because then someone might notify him, but this particular branch was dead after a certain time, and so no one would notice. Then I went on vacation, and seeing as I hadn't done anything, let alone his laundry list of crap, I never went back despite the fact that I didn't do what he asked. He still expected me back, so I had the pleasure of listening to his 5 or 6 irate messages before he finally realized that it wasn't a misunderstanding about what I was supposed to return to work. I was just following his instructions. Yeah, these bosses are always the worst. But he should have just said, "Oh, I'm already in this foreign country," or a load of states away, and then the guy would have been like, "Oh, I can't expect him back then, want to be called your formal name." No problem, however, you must do the same years ago. I was working for a university as a secretary for a rather large department. I was told by the chair to call everyone by their first name rather than the formal doctor. So I complied, and life went on with me using informal names and them doing the same for me. However, about a year later, I called to Dr. So-and-so in the next room to ask a question. It was benign enough and still respectful using his first name. Not long after I received an email, he addressed it to Rizzoli and stated that I needed to call him Dr. So-and-so and not use his first name. I knew this was a way to establish his superiority over me, but I would not have it. I may have been the secretary, but I was still a human being who deserved respect too. Here is where the malicious compliance came into play. I wrote him an email back, addressing him as Dr. So-and-so. I agreed to call him by his formal name, but I insisted that he do the same to me. I am no longer Risala, but Mrs. Doe. I copied the department chair and executive aide, so all were in the loop. He went to the chair to complain, but she sided with me, and so it began from there on now. It was Dr. So-and-so on every correspondence, and when I spoke to him, if he addressed me as Rizzoli, I would remind him that I wanted to be addressed as Mrs. Doe, and would not answer until he addressed me as Search. This really got on his nerve. He did not want to be the only one to call me by the formal, as it messed with his need for superiority over. Appeared it only took less than a week before he wrote me again. This time it was to say, please call him Paul, instead of Dr. So-and-so. No apology to me, just a resounding white flag surrender. I took it as a small win for the peons and proceeded to call him Paul. I worked in that department for 8 years, and we never had another problem like this on her side. No. I always called him Dr. So-and-so in front of and to the students, as most wanted to be addressed as such in their classes. I absolutely despise people with these kind of superiority complexes. It's like, okay, mate, I'm not going to call you that. Hey, everyone. I hope you all had a really good day and that you enjoyed that video. If you want to check out some of the videos, then click on screen right now, but check out the playlist down below. If you enjoyed that video, then please do leave a like. And if you want to submit your own stories, I think you can do so by joining the Discord in the top link in the description. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon, so